Worry belongs to tomorrow. Regret belongs to yesterday. Happiness is here and now. I learned during the war how to think. I learned to quantify the worst thing, and quite often the worst thing is not so bad.
The best-selling author and host.
The #1 health and wellness podcast.
On Purpose with Jay Shetty.
Bob, I want to dive straight in to your journey and to really dive into your work that you're doing today. And I think I was really blown away to hear about your time as a Marine. And I'd like to start there.
Well, you know, when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, I did so mostly because I had two friends of mine ask me to join them. We were in our senior year of high school, and they were going to visit with the Marine Corps recruiter and asked me if I'd go along with them, and I did. You know, as we spent time with the Marine Corps recruiter, he eventually had us in the palm of his hands. I mean, this was during the height of the Vietnam War in 1968. I lasted 1 month. And walking through a village at night, I was on the point team. And the point man, he stepped over a tripwire, missed it, and I hit it. And that thing blew, and I got shrapnel in both my legs and my left elbow, and I was medevaced out. I left on a stretcher. So, you know, the thoughts that I took back from that is I think I learned to think one day at a time. And I looked to quantify the worst thing that could possibly happen. That's got me through a number of businesses. I built 3 businesses now. I'm working on the third, all from scratch. And, you know, when you do a startup, you have a lot of good days and a lot of bad days. And sometimes, you know, the good days are euphoric and the bad days look like Armageddon. So, you know, how you think really matters. And I learned during the war how to think. I learned to quantify the worst thing, and quite often the worst thing, when you sit down and you quantify, it's not so bad. But if you look at the worst thing as this big, dark room full of bad things that could happen, then it looks like far worse than it actually is, and then it becomes debilitating.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a powerful reflection, hearing that from you based on the experiences that you went through. Often we hear that idea, but sitting with you here today, listening to you in person, I can feel just how real that idea is for you. I love what you said about facing one day at a time. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of our anxiety, a lot of our pain, a lot of our stress is based on what could happen in 12 months.
Exactly.
Or what happened 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, well, actually, when you take one day at a time, that feels manageable and solvable, even in such extreme situations.
Well, you know, one day at a time is something you can do something about, right? Because it's there, you know, to be worried about a year from now, there's not much you can do until it's a year from now. And then it becomes one day at a time.
Yeah.
I often thought that worry belongs to tomorrow. Regret belongs to yesterday. Happiness is here and now.
That's so powerful. Wow. And then when you came back and you come back and you're experiencing depression, you're experiencing, of course, all the stress, the trauma that comes from living in that way for a month. I mean, how did your parents react to that? Before we get on to how you reacted to it, how did your parents feel?
I grew up in a different kind of house. I grew up in a blue collar neighborhood in East Baltimore, and Mom and Dad were both compulsive gamblers, and they weren't very good at it. Now, I wouldn't trade my mom and dad for any two on the planet. I loved them to pieces, but they didn't pay a lot of attention to me, and I wasn't actually home that much, so they never noticed. They never noticed, and a lot of it, which a lot of veterans, I just kept to myself. You know, my symptoms were, and as I was home, they got worse, and they got worse, and they got worse. And when I say that, I mean over 49 years. The symptoms with me was I didn't want to go places. I didn't want to be with groups, you know. No matter who the group was, I never felt like I belonged, because I'd be there and I'd have this picture of the stuff that we did. I mean, and it just never leaves you. And of course, nobody else is dealing with that kind of stuff. So you definitely are different, right? So that's one of the things. A quick temper is another thing. People would describe me as being one of the most intense people they've ever met. Now, the crying, when I got into that, it was always by myself. Nobody be around. But there was good things too. And the good things were when I went to college, when I came back, I worked as a laborer in a steel mill, at Bethlehem Steel. And I did that for a year. And then the University of Baltimore had a special deal for veterans where my high school grades didn't matter, thank goodness. I didn't have to take the entrance exams, right? And I could go on the GI Bill, which I did. I went, studied accounting. Literally, as fate would have it, it was the first major in the book. What is this? They said, you good with math? I said, yeah, as good as anything. You interested in business? Yeah, you should try accounting. And I did. And I wound up graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Accountancy, magna cum laude.
Wow, congratulations.
I'd have never done that without the Marine Corps. Never, ever, ever. Took the CPA exam, passed it the first time, got a job where I would travel. My life is full of just these coincidences, where I was working for a commercial credit leasing corp, and this is back in 1975. They sent me to Redwood City to schedule the assets to this leasing company they want to buy. I finish. I have 12 hours until the flight. I wind up on Stanford campus at the bookstore because I always like to read and so forth. And I buy a book on programming in the basic language. And I read enough of that during the layover, and on the flight wrote my first programs, and then got good at it. Bought and the company that I worked for had a dumb terminal that happened to run the basic computer language.
Wow.
And then I taught myself Pascal, and then C, and then C++. And I started my first business, which was Parsons Technology. And I wrote all the code for that. And when I was working there, I worked 60-hour stints, 60 hours at a time. I come to work Monday morning, worked through Tuesday morning, worked through Wednesday morning, and then about 8 o'clock at night, I'd start to hallucinate. After about 60 hours, I'd hear stuff that wasn't there, maybe see something move that I know didn't. And I'd go back, go to sleep, come back, after 8 hours in a shower and a little workout, do it again. And that's how that company got off the ground. I put $40,000 into that company, and I sold it to Intuit for $64 million. That was my first business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Most people just reintegrating into society, just kind of surviving seems to be a natural challenge because of the extreme events that people go through. How did you navigate that when you were talking about some of the challenges you had when you came back? How did you even just start finding your way again? Because it can be so disassociating. It can be so disconnected.
Well, using that term, disassociating, there was a time when I'd seen a psychiatrist for a good while, and she told me one of the things that has helped me get through the war and also helped me in business, she says, you have a remarkable ability to disassociate. And where I developed that, I don't know. One of the blessings that I have is I don't worry about anything at all. I just don't worry. And that has been one of the things that, to me, is helped bring out the joy in my life, what joy there was.
That's beautiful to hear. That's what an incredible gift to have, to not worry. That's very special. When you started learning and teaching yourself these coding languages and you started building this company, what was your level of business experience at the time or technology experience at the time? And how did you even figure out what you wanted to build? I think there's so many people today. I literally was just at the Tech University in Monterrey, Mexico. 50% of the people from that university go on to become entrepreneurs. And so it's a really phenomenal institution. But one of the biggest questions I saw that young people have is, Jay, how do I know if I'm doing the right thing? Or I don't know what I'm building, or what should I focus on? I feel like now there's so much choice that people feel paralyzed by the amount of options they have.
I had a degree in accountancy, so I understood the record keeping of business.
Right.
All right. I started a little business, which was more of a bookkeeping business than anything, where I'd work with these small businesses. Some were taverns. One was a flower shop. One of my favorites was pest control, Phil's Pest Control. The guy's name was Fat Willie. I learned a lot from him. The way he would keep track of things, and I, and it got to the point where over a few years, I could, start doing the records of a business, and I could tell you if they'd succeed or not. And anyhow, using those little things that I learned there, that's what I did when I launched my business. And then plus I learned, like, for example, I read during the Civil War, right? During the Civil War in the Union, there was General McClellan, who really trained and organized the Union Army. But he could not move them into battle, just couldn't do it, right? And then so Lincoln fired him and put Grant there, and Grant didn't care how they were organized. The enemy's over there, go there, right? That's what he did. And actually, the right way is a mixture of the two, right? So I learned that from them. I learned from John D. Rockefeller that the guy who knows the most about his business, he kept exceptional records. They were all manual, but he knew everything about his business at a time when very few people did. The guy who knows the most about his business quite often is the guy that wins, because, as you know, knowledge truly is power, and especially specific and pertinent knowledge. So, I mean, I learned from people in history, right? And then beyond that, I just powered through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love those examples. I think what I love about them is I often say to people that you can be mentored by people you've never met. When we study history, when we look at patterns, when we look at connections and start connecting the dots between events that have happened before us, you can actually garner so much wisdom and so much insight, even if you never asked Rockefeller the question yourself.
Exactly. I mean, and so many Julius Caesar's another one.
Yeah.
What he was able to do in Gaul and how he was able to, lead his armies. And one time he was attacked by a vastly larger force, and the battlements that he built was just brilliant, right? Nobody showed him how to do that. He figured it out. So, I mean, we have that ability as long as you believe in yourself and you give yourself a chance.
If there's someone right now who's listening who's thinking about starting a business, what would be the top 3 things you think they should think about if they're thinking about starting something?
Well, the first thing is they should do something that they love, that is fun, that is something that they're really interested in. And the reason for that, my father used to tell me, he used to say, Robert, when you love something, it tells you all its secrets. And
that's beautiful.
And basically, if you love what you're doing, it's going to you're going to work harder, and that all translates to success. And then let's see here, what would be the second? You have to not be doing it for the money. If you start a business and you're doing it just to turn a buck, I don't think you'll be successful. You got to start it to be special. And the businesses that I started, and none of them, even GoDaddy, did I do it to make money. I did it to make a difference. When you work to make a difference, you do things that on the surface, from a business standpoint, it doesn't make sense. But when it comes to really doing something special and getting your idea across and taking care of your customers and so forth, that's what you need to do. And you will never do that if you're just doing it for $1. The third thing is there's 2 groups of people that you have to energize. The first group is your employees. And your employees, they need to believe in what you're doing, and you need to structure it so they can believe in what you're doing, that it's special. And again, if you're doing it for money, they're going to have a difficult time doing that. But if if you have a higher purpose, right? People always do want to aspire to a higher purpose, I believe. So what happens is when you do that with them, it creates enthusiasm. And what do we know about enthusiasm? It's contagious.
Yeah.
And the employees then fire up the customers, and then the customers fire up each other. So it'd be those three things.
Yeah, those are great answers. I love those three things. They're such great points. What was something that you were passionate about with GoDaddy? Like when you said that, and I fully agree with you that we should never start business to make money. There has to be a greater goal with it. What was that goal with GoDaddy when it started out? Like the part we don't see.
Well, when I started GoDaddy, it had been after I sold Parsons Technology, which was the name of my first business, and I signed a non-compete with Intuit. Not that I couldn't compete with them, I couldn't work for money.
Yeah.
Right, for a few years, and they held back a few $1 million, and when it was up, I just wanted to be back in action again, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. This was back when the internet was just getting going, like 97. So I named this business Joe Max Technologies. I had like $36 million. I had gotten divorced. I mean, I don't blame her. PTSD, I'm lucky she kept me around that long. So I wanted to do something in the internet. So what I did was I thought I would hire some pretty sharp people, and we would start trying things on the internet. And when we did, if it worked, we would continue, and if it didn't, we'd move on. And so I named it Joe Max Technologies after a dirt road that I drove by on the way to work. I mean, it didn't matter. I mean, we didn't do anything. So our employees would go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, and people would ask them, "What are you doing?" They go, "Well, we don't know." They said, "I've never had a business tell me that." and then eventually, as time went on, we decided to start doing websites for people. And these are way early, really fundamental websites. And we noticed that the websites business would generate cash, but it couldn't scale because, it was just your efforts there that you were tied to. I have a rule that if you got the right business, you can make money while you're sleeping. Your business can be successful while you're sleeping. So we then wrote software that would build a website for people. They could do it themselves. We had so many requirements. And then eventually in 99 and 2000, we became a domain name registrar, renamed the company GoDaddy, I did that at first as a joke, but it stuck. and never did we dream that we'd make our bread on domain names.
Yeah.
And then there's a further story going back. Okay, I would keep track of how much money I had, and then and tie that to how successful the business is doing. Now you remember that were the days of cash burn, right? And so I would start it, and when I first started, I said, I'm not going to worry about this business until I get down to 30 million, and then 25, and then 20, and then 18, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6. We get down to $6 million, and this is about.
So you never raised; it was all your own money you put into it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It was always only my own money. I've never really borrowed much, and from the first business, none.
Wow. And
GoDaddy, none, and no partners.
Oh, incredible! Wow.
Yeah. So I get down to $6 million, and one of the things I learned is from reading about General Grant. He kept his own counsel. I kept my own counsel. So I decided to shut GoDaddy down while I still had some money. And the reason I had to is the dot-com boom was so loud that you couldn't buy advertising. I mean, people were paying $100 for a customer, and the customer might generate $2. Well, you're going to burn up a lot of cash that way.
Absolutely,
and I don't care how big your truck is, you're not going to. You're not going to be able to make wages.
Yeah.
That's what I did. So I go to Hawaii, And I went there to first pay my bills, pay my employees, and sell the assets. Figured out how I'm going to do that. And then, so I'm there by myself for a week. And as I started thinking about, I don't want to shut it down. I just had this feeling I just didn't want to shut it down. The epiphany for me happened when this guy is parking cars and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, no, Mr. Parsons." This guy's a little older than me, throwing his keys up in the air, happy as a lark, right? I'm thinking, what's wrong with his picture? This guy has probably got nothing. He's parking cars for a living. Look how happy and free he is. I got $6 million and I'm miserable, right? And so I decided then that I would go back and not shut the company down. And I just would ride it out. And if the company sunk, I'd go down with the ship. Wow. So that was probably in February, March. And later then, the dot-com crash happened. And the dot-com crash, GoDaddy was born out of that, because I was one of the few guys that was paying my bills, and all these companies just went away. I mean, we would have checks returned every week from different companies that just weren't there anymore, right? And so we would take and we'd go ahead, and I went from not being able to buy advertising at any price to having people standing in line to give it to me. I had more friends than I thought I had. And then all of a sudden things turned around for us. And that October, we became profitable for the very first time and never missed a month since.
Wow. That's unbelievable. I mean, it sounds like you've been guided so much by your intuition as well as data. Like you talked about the numbers, you talked about knowing your business, you talked about knowing your numbers, but it sounds like you're also guided intuitively. Would you agree with that? Is that true? Is that fair or not really?
You know, sometimes you hear this saying, better lucky than good, and things just happen, and you'd like to believe they happen for a reason. I believe the universe is guiding you. Mm-hmm. And I believe there's an intelligence to it, however you define that intelligence, mm-hmm. Whether it's, a particular form of God or just the way of the universe. But I believe it's there.
Yeah, that's incredible. What an unbelievable story. I mean, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, you have this really positive mindset. You have this really incredible ability to find the good even in challenging times. What's been one of the biggest failures in your life, or something that's gone wrong that maybe in business or in another field that you learned a lot from, or you took a lot of insight from? I
would say one of the regrets I have is, when I came back and I got married and I had kids, is I missed their childhood because I was working so hard. Back then I had
trời đổ cơn mưa rào, em đi câu biệt ly còn chưa chào, quên môi hôn nắm say cái nắm tay, quên những ái ân lẫn giận hờn vừa trao, em ơi tình đầu còn nhiều bỡ ngỡ, sao lại đành lỡ dở, anh không biết sóng bắt đầu từ đâu, nhưng sóng quá lớn thì cuộc yêu vỡ bờ, em ơi giấc mộng chưa thành đã dở dang, ngậm đắng nuốt cay nhìn trời mà thở than, có lẽ nhân duyên sắp đặt sự lỡ làng, anh không bằng lòng nhưng đâu thể gỡ gạt, vài kỷ niệm nhật ký vẫn ghi chép, vài đoạn phim còn lưu lại chi tiết, đớn đau nào não nề như khi biết đoạn kết thê lương trên dòng sông ly biệt, em ơi chờ đợi cả thanh xuân như cánh hoa 10 giờ, vẫn y nguyên cảnh vật nhưng chúng ta bây giờ đây thành người thừa, chờ đợi cả thanh xuân như cánh hoa 10 giờ, vẫn y nguyên cảnh vật nhưng chúng ta bây giờ đây thành người thừa, chẳng bất ngờ về chuyện đời hợp tan, chỉ chưa quen khi chơi với ngập tràn, ai mang đi chân yêu rồi đập nát để lại khúc nhạc buồn giữa trời đất âm vang, người hữu tình dốc gan ruột vì nhau cho đến cuối cùng thì có được gì đâu, đem cho đời phải trang sử bi sầu, giữ cho riêng mình một con tim dì máu, đối diện câu chuyện độc thoại nội tâm, nhiều thứ anh cần học lại nội dung, giá em ở đây trách móc phải lỗi lầm thì cuộc đời anh các khóc lại đối xứng, vì ai nên mang thanh xuân này vô định, kẻ hữu ý nhưng kẻ chỉ vô tình, anh giống như Mr. Fantastic bởi vì hạnh phúc của anh biết vô hình, em ơi chờ đợi cả thanh xuân như cánh hoa 10 giờ,
PTSD so bad I had a flash temper. So it was probably some ways, the hard thing is, it's a good thing that I wasn't around. But I have a great relationship with all three of them now. I love them dearly, and I look forward to treasure our time together.
That's incredible. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting to hear about your experience that you weren't there, but you're saying it was actually good I wasn't there because I had PTSD and I was dealing with that. And I've heard in your journey you talk about how psychedelics were like a huge part of your coming home.
100%.
And could you walk us through how you got introduced to that and how you were open to that?
In 2018, I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. I went through it like a bag of peanuts, and I just told my wife, Renee, who is the love of my life, I never did psychedelics before in my life, never did them, anything like that. But I said to her, if this can do it for me, I want to try them. And I got to the point, Jay, where somebody could come up to me and say, like at the golf course, and say, "You were in Vietnam, weren't you?" I start crying. Yeah, it gets worse, So she had me hooked up in 2 weeks with two individuals that, again, would see me in Hawaii. And on the first day, I did ayahuasca. And it's guided, a lot of talk. And the therapy that does the healing, psychedelics make it possible because it make you receptive and it make you willing to change. So on the first day, it was ayahuasca. On the second day, it was magic mushrooms, psilocybin, and a little interesting aside, when the guide made a teapot, and he says, I made this teapot holds 3 cups, and I made them strong, so you'll only need one. I drank all 3 cups, and I ate the tea bags. Honest engine. Oh man, I was sailing. And then, then a lot. And then on the third day, I took a break, and on the 4th day, it was LSD. And afterwards, I was a different guy. I was totally a different guy. The people that worked with me were like, what happened to him? He's so nice. He doesn't have a temper. He's not that intense, scary dude anymore. My son told his wife, he said, man, I'm worried my dad's going to die soon. And she goes, why? And he goes, well, I think he found out he's going to die soon because he keeps calling and he's so nice and so forth. But and it was that type of thing. And of course, Renee, my wife, noticed it instantly. And the best way I can describe it is, after being treated with psychedelics, it had been 49 years since the war. I finally came home.
That's unbelievable. Do you feel that you went back to being who you were before the war?
Exactly, enriched by everything I learned since. And, I still had the memories of the war. There's times when, when I talk about it, I choke up and so forth, but I'm not debilitated by it anymore. But it's still very much there.
Of course. Yeah. It sounds like that you've kept the parts that have made you who you are and left the parts that define.
Đưa cho anh cái bản đồ, đưa cho anh cuốn từ điển, đưa anh đi từ cấp cứu. Kiện em. Cho anh cái bản đồ, đưa cho anh cuốn từ điển, đưa anh đi từ cấp cứu. Mặc cuộc đời nó chẳng như ý em mong, anh nguyện vẫn luôn sẽ như lòng em muốn. Dẫu không cách nào mang nắng về đêm đông, cũng không hái được sao trên trời kia đem xuống. Nhưng sau này có thể đưa em giữ hộ tiền lương, sau này có thể làm việc nhà nếu em lười. Nhân gian thường nói không tồn tại thiên đường, chắc do họ chưa từng nhìn thấy lúc em cười. Ấm áp tỏa sáng tựa vầng thái dương, kéo anh chuyển động tinh tiến ở xung quanh. Hoài ngày hạnh phúc nhất mà anh âm thầm mãi ước, ngày ta đứng trước linh mục và cùng sánh vai lại. Thêm lần nữa tuyên bố nhẹ, em về khuyên bố mẹ kén rể đi anh đến tuyển ngay. Dù ít tin tưởng vào duyên số, nhưng nếu em em cho số đảm bảo mình nên duyên đấy. Từ khi gặp em Google hết tác dụng bởi em là tất cả những gì anh cần tìm, giống một kho báu để ngăn người khác đụng tới. Đối đầu thế giới anh cũng sẵn sàng cân tín, ghét phải lặng im coi em như cô bạn. Nỗi nhớ đong đầy bao giờ mới khô cạn, khoảnh khắc bên nhau thời gian như ngừng trôi vì em sở hữu sự hấp dẫn vô hạn. Yêu đơn phương cảm giác khó đọc tên, mọi thứ mù mịt giống như đứng trước bão. Mãi hy vọng chờ đợi ngóng trông đến ngày nụ hôn đó sẽ một lần được trao. Hương thơm ngọt ngào vương trên mái tóc em, gây nghiện cực mạnh anh ngày đêm ước ao. Quỳnh là loài hoa đẹp nhất trong bóng đêm, cuộc đời này u tối đang cần em bước vào. Đưa cho anh cái bản đồ vì anh sắp lạc bên trong đôi mắt kia. Hãy đưa cho anh cuốn từ điển vì cảm xúc này anh không thể cắt nghĩa. Chuẩn bị đưa anh đi từ cấp cứu vì anh sắp gục ngã dưới chân một nữ thần. Kiện em bóc lột khiến trái tim anh sao xuyến quanh năm chẳng được nghỉ kể cả ngày chủ nhật. Sắp phát in mà đâu dám lộ ra, bên bưu điện cũng không ship hộ quà. Họ chẳng thể nào chuyển hết toàn bộ nhung nhớ của anh định trao em bởi tại vì to quá. Xuất hiện bất ngờ như cơn gió vườn qua, trái tim thẫn thờ tự dưng nó chợt lạ. Đối với cuộc yêu chỉ đủ chỗ cho hai người nên giá trị em giờ luôn là nhỏ hơn ba. Nhưng tất cả đều do anh nhút nhát mà dù chinh phục em đúng mục tiêu đích thực. Những câu tỏ tình lại như quốc ca Tây Ban Nha mãi không thể có được một lời chính thức. Anh khen tức với những chiếc gối ôm được trong vòng tay cùng người mà mình thích. Anh khao khát chạm vào bờ môi hôn tới nỗi thú nuôi anh cũng xem là kình địch. Mẹ anh khuyến khích nên đi theo giấc mơ đời mình, vậy anh đi theo em suốt trọn kiếp này nhé. Quyến rũ đến mức bao tấc thơ lời bình cũng khó để lột tả cái vẻ đẹp gây mê. Em làm anh cứ loạn lên lưu luyến lại càng thêm khi chót phần vương tình, làm thao thức bâng khuâng giữa màn đêm tâm trí hoài ngàn năm mãi say đắm hương quỳnh. Yêu đơn phương cảm giác khó đọc tên, mọi thứ mù mịt giống như đứng trước bão. Mãi hy vọng chờ đợi ngóng trông đến ngày nụ hôn đó sẽ một lần được trao. Hương thơm ngọt ngào vương trên mái tóc em, gây nghiện cực mạnh anh ngày đêm ước ao. Quỳnh là loài hoa đẹp nhất trong bóng đêm, cuộc đời này u tối đang cần em bước vào.
And who it forced you to be, if that feels right.
Yeah, for sure.
To be honest, just sitting with you today, like you have such a joyful spirit. You have such a like positive outlook on life. You're fun to be around. Like that's all I'm experiencing. That's how I experienced you at PXG when I was there a couple of years ago. And for me to know, it feels like this is who you are. This is who you always were. But naturally the challenges just clouded over and the experiences clouded over that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The windows have been opened.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And is that a practice that you have to keep up? Do you go back to Hawaii or to the centers to continue that practice, or no? It was once and it's kind of stayed?
I've went through the process twice.
Right.
I've went through the process once myself, and then once with two of the guys I served with, and they both came home.
Wow.
They both came home.
That's unbelievable. That must be beautiful for you to see that for other people to...
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I spend time and money and help out as best I can is to get psychedelics made legal for therapeutic use. We're very close with MDMA, thank God, to Rick Doblin and MAPS. And, the rest, I think it's not too far behind. I tell you, when we do, it's going to be a renaissance. And we deserve that as a people. And our veterans deserve it. Every veteran should be treated with it when they come back. Because the Veterans Administration says 30% of the combat veterans have PTSD. I'd be willing to say 100% do. But 30% are really good at pushing it down. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's not surprising. I mean, like you said, like no one else can relate to what that experience is like. No one else can understand it. And I mean, that's a lot to carry for the human mind and the human brain.
Absolutely, for sure. When those two were treated, and to me, you should have seen the tears. I mean, the tears. I mean, and it's like, they were carrying some. They were, they were there much longer than I was, but they carry a lot of crosses.
Yeah. What are some of the from all your experiences in life, you've lived so many different lives, it seems, as well. What are some of the mindsets or approaches you think, lessons that you think people should carry with them? What are some of the mistakes people make, or what are some of the shifts in our mindset we could make to live happier and healthier lives?
You need to believe in yourself. Definitely you need to believe in yourself because, while there's many books, there's no manual. You know, what we talked about, looking too far into the future, day at a time. And also when you're doing stuff, the best you can, have fun. Have fun. You know, we're more productive when we have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people today have a lot of self-doubt. When you said believe in yourself, when I'm traveling and speaking and coaching people and meeting people, I notice self-doubt to be just such a big challenge when you say believe in yourself. And I think so many people, even if they act confident and they act secure, inside there's such a low self-esteem situation that we have in the country right now and in the world right now. Like if someone has self-doubt or they're feeling like they don't have potential or they don't believe in themselves, what would you say to them?
I would say there's couple things they need to do that usually they have self-doubt for a reason. Usually they were not encouraged, they were discouraged as they were raised, I would think. And that being the case, I would say this therapy with psychedelics, when it's available, would be perfect because it would free them from a lot of those shackles. And there's something that works just as good, and it is legal. It's called an SGB block. Do you know about it?
No, I don't. Please tell me.
Okay, what an SGB block is, it's as S and G stands for stellate ganglion, and then B stands for block. And what it is PTSD and all that stuff is caused from the amygdala in the front of the mind. Okay, and the amygdala manages fight or flight and emotions. Well, what happens is, as we go through all these unpleasant events and so forth, it gets out of tilt, and the individual stays in a close to a fight or flight type situation, which is what PTSD is, and it's debilitating. But the problem is, with the human mind, the mind hides its flaws from the person in which it resides. They don't know it. They feel like they're just perfect, except they have self-doubt, or they have anxiety, or they're on edge, or that sort of thing. It's the amygdala, all right? So the amygdala communicates with the rest of the body through the stellate ganglion nerves in the neck. And when there's a fight or flight response necessary, or be it a real or emotional, it releases adrenaline and epinephrine. It speeds the heart up. It dilates the lungs. It tightens the arteries in the extremities to move blood to the core. All those things to get us to survive that have been developed over millennia, right? It does all that. Well, what is happening is the people that are suffering from this, they're in that state very close, and any trigger just pushes them right into it, and they have no control over it. They have no physical control over it, even though they say, you hear people say, I don't know what's wrong with me, right? Okay, this is what the SGB block does, is using, it's a medical doctor using ultrasound, takes about 5 minutes. They take and shoot the big brother, a lidocaine, in the neck, right next to the stellate ganglion nerves. It numbs them, and when it does, the amygdala goes offline. It just shuts down. And then the individual will get a little droopy eye, talk like a sailor, right? And that sort of thing. And then when it the numbing agent wears off, and the eye returns to normal, and the voice normal. The amygdala reconnects, and it reboots. It resets, and it goes back to the way the individual should be, and the difference is profound. All right? Now, this is done all over the country. It's you can find a website called Stella Centers, which will tell you about it. I'm not involved in it at all. I just know about it, and I help people get it done. The people, it changes their lives. I've helped NFL players do it. I've helped veterans. I've helped people that little kids that are just having trouble in school, and I mean stuff like that. It's amazing. And there's only one downside, and the downside is it's not permanent. In many cases, it'll be 6 months or a year or 2 years. But here's what you do. When you start sliding back, get it done again. I've had it done 4 times. I have probably helped 150 people get it done, never had one negative result, and everybody just...
And they're all veterans too, or just anyone?
Anyone, yeah. And they just, thank you. It is just amazing.
Bob, it's wonderful to hear your spirit of, healing yourself, wanting to help heal others. I can see how much joy you get in helping other people and seeing them break through their challenges and what's holding them back. We end every episode here with what's called the final 5. And these 5 questions have to be answered in 1 word to 1 sentence maximum.
Okay.
Bob Parsons, these are your final 5. Question number 1, what is the best advice you've ever heard or received?
Do what you love.
Great answer. Second question, what is the worst advice you've ever heard or received?
Worst advice? Oh my God. This horse can't lose.
Question number 3, what's something you used to value, but you don't value anymore?
I'd say to a degree, money.
Question number 4, what's something you're trying to learn right now, or what's something that you're working on right now that you're excited about?
I'm trying to learn what I can do to get psychedelics legal.
In a medical capacity, in a healing
exactly,
capacity. Yeah. 5th and final question. If you could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
This sounds trite, but and I don't know how you'd make it a law, but I'd just say, if you love your neighbor.
Yeah, that would be beautiful.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would make the world a much better place. We wouldn't have to have so many people who have to go to war and come back with PTSD and have to deal with the repercussions of that. So,
for sure.
Yeah. Bob, it has been such a joy, such a pleasure to spend this time with you today. Honestly, I meant everything I said. Your spirit, your energy, the way you communicate, just your smile. It's truly just, it's infectious. It's very infectious being around you. And I can't begin to imagine the journey you've had to go on to rediscover yourself, to re-find yourself, to allow yourself to be yourself from before. And it's unbelievable to experience it. So thank you so much for this honor and for this opportunity to sit with you and have this conversation.
Well, I got to tell you, it's been absolutely my pleasure. So thank you.
No, you're very kind, Bob. And for everyone who's been listening or watching, make sure that you share the insights that Bob gave, things that are going to stay with you, messages that you're going to pass on to a friend. I hope that you'll pass this episode on to others as well. Make sure you check out everything that Bob's working on as well. Bob, congratulations. I know tonight you have a party to celebrate your new partnership with PXG and Nick Jonas as well.
Yes, we do. Very excited about it.
I hope that goes extremely, extremely well. And for everyone who's been watching, I hope you come back and listen to more episodes of On Purpose, dedicated to helping you be happier, healthier, and more healed. Thank you so much. If you love this episode, you'll enjoy my interview with Dr. Daniel Amen on how to change your life by changing your brain.